shit, my other glasses. There we go. No glare. All right. I'm hoping people pop in tonight, babe. There's one person in. Troy, how are you? Wesley September, how are you, my friend? Rhonda, how are you? Can you all hear me? I hope you guys can hear me. Glenn, how are you? Obviously. I'm right now, I want to make sure everyone can hear me because I have internet, but I don't have my internet hooked up in the studio yet. So I apologize if there's any buffering. Next week there will not be because I have my internet set up for tomorrow. Eremic! What's up, brother? Gavin Rogers, how are you? Just good, how are you? Doug, how are you? Brian Mons, Sean McCabe, Elvis King, Nick Carroll, how are you? Jane, how are you? Ice searching. Tyler, how are you? Jen, Meg, how are you? Lake Superior, how are you? Large, how are you? I didn't do a live last week. I'm sure you did miss me because I missed you guys. Nick Carroll, your surgery is coming up. You're in my prayers, my friend. You are in my prayers. How are you, Lisa? DL, what's up, my friend? John Sumner. Phil Woods, how are you? Hollows, how are you? Be safe, please. What's up, MB? I gotcha, Elvis. I gotcha. You ain't dead. Jimmy, what's going on? How are you, buddy? DB Mac, how are you, my friend? How are you? Nushka, Robert Sharp. So I got some really good encounters tonight. I got some Lizzo experiences tonight. Oh, shit. Where are they? Hang on one second. Where are they? They were with your purse. Uh-oh. Hang on one second. Give me 1 second. I got to find the Lizzo stories. I'll print out another set. Don't worry. All right. I might have to print out another set if I can't find them. But I got 2 really great Lizzo stories for tonight. And everything's doing good. So, yeah, I'm in the new environment. Trying to get everything established here. Got the play button behind me. I don't know what I did with them. I got him, babe. I got him. Oh, no. I got him. Sorry about that, guys. All right. So, first live stream, new place, and everything's going well. The move, still going through it, still moving stuff, but we got the studio set up. This was the one thing that Rachel wanted to have done, was have the studio set up so we could do a live stream for this weekend for you guys. So I'm very excited. I love the new studio. I got my old desk from upstairs. Everything's working out perfectly. But John Rodriguez, how are you? All right, so we'll start the night off. I got some black-eyed kids experiences for you guys. Nexus, how are you? Tigger loves the new. Literally, I'll explain what happened when Tigger got here. Tigger is a dink. Like, I love him, but he's a big dink. And Rachel had to catch him and put him in a cat crate because he's only moved once in his life. So she gets him, boop, puts him in a cat crate. He was not excited about this at all. He cries the whole way out here, 40 minutes of a drive out here. And we get him here. We let him out of the cat crate. He goes and eats his food. And then 20 minutes later, takes a big old dump because he's just a dirt bag. But I love him. So he loves it here. And he is super. No, that's his litter box. That's his litter box. His litter box is in the studio. So this is just the setup for right now. But I'm just happy. I'm happy to be here with you guys. I'm happy that you guys are here with me. Sonia, how are you? So, like I said, Dogman experiences, Bigfoot, crawler, black-eyed kids, and some paranormal. But we'll start this off right now with, I randomly remembered this encounter I had, so I thought I'd share this with you guys. May I preface, I've always been a skeptic of ghosts, paranormal activity, but still believe anything is possible. Anyway, let me get into it. When I was 15, I had gone to a party with some friends. Everyone was drinking, etc. But I wouldn't say anyone was particularly drunk, considering it was just a few cruises, a Australian vodka drink. All of a sudden, I had a friend acting very strange, to the point her boyfriend actually pulled me aside and asked me to help him deal with it, as I was the only one who had not been drinking that night. So he thought I was the most responsible choice, which in hindsight was odd for me, as at that age I was normally the one who would be the drunkest, a lightweight with zero self at the time. Anyway, as I went into the room, she was lying down and was speaking in a different language. She's from Iran, but we were all very much aware of the language she spoke sounded like. I was a little shocked and thought she was playing around with us. So I said loudly, knowing that she hated her curls, "Oh, just give her straight hair a wash." Weird thing to say, I know. But I knew in any situation, if her hair wasn't in a risk of being wet or turning curly, she would give up with the behavior she was displaying. But she didn't show any reaction to it. I still wasn't very sure why she was speaking in a language that wasn't her native English or native English or language. She was also giggling, which was odd. She ended up running out of the room and ran into the garage where all the drinks were, etc. So we had all been in and out of this room and were familiar with setting the decor in there. Please keep this in mind when we're following her, deciding she was too drunk and needed to not be allowed anymore. We walked in shocked to find her standing looking up at a deer skull. But only the deer skull wasn't in its usual state. It was black with twisted white and black swirls where hollow eyes should have been. Myself and her boyfriend screamed. She looked back and laughed. She ran out of the room and we followed. I remember feeling a sense of unease, wrong, and a shift in the air. It's hard to explain, but it was something I've never experienced before or since that night. We straight away decided we needed to pray. We all went to Catholic school, so that was our first thought to fall back on. We alerted the girl who threw the party and a few other close friends that went upstairs. We prayed, nothing worked. She was still being weird, slightly aggressive. We realized that none of us were really believers of God, so we asked one of the more religious girls to pray with us, and she seemed to act normal. This all seems very strange and odd, trust me, I know. But we ended up kind of going back to normal. I did ask her if she remembered anything. She said no, and we all seemed to brush it under the rug, which to me now is crazy, as to this day I feel like so much of this went unanswered. Anyway, after I went back to the room, I saw the black skull and noticed it was no longer black with swirling eyes. It was good old plain skull mounted on the wall. The girl who threw the party did explain her and her family all experienced a lot of sleep paralysis and had a church come and bless the house multiple times. And that's the most we kind of got out of the situation. Anyway, years went by and I kind of gaslit myself into thinking that I was either being pranked, I saw what the skull looked like, or I had somehow made it all up in my mind. That was until I reconnected with the girl who was acting strange that night. I remember her saying to me randomly while we were hanging out, I don't remember much of that party, but I do remember the skull with black and white swirling eyes. My shock was through the roof. I had convinced myself I missaw it. Never really spoke about it, what I saw of that skull, due to people thinking that I was lying, etc. And somehow she described exactly what I saw when I never described what I saw in that room with her and her boyfriend. I also found out by Aboriginals that the land we all lived on was cursed land, maybe connected, I don't know. Anyway, sorry if this doesn't make a lot of sense or I've written it horribly. I do struggle with reading and writing, but thank you for allowing me to share. Who popped in while out? Hercules Misfit, how are you? Shackle Neck, what's going on, buddy? How are you? Glad that you're here with us. Glad that you're here with us. Time in the Pacific Northwest, how are you? Eli, how are you, buddy? Almost Hercules. We got some more work to do, but not a lot. Not a lot. It's actually 10 years of stuff in that house was pretty crazy, you know. So it's like, I don't know. It's difficult, but it's worth it, you know. I'm happy. I don't have to wake up in the morning and drive 40 minutes home. So I'm already home. Ultimate Cheeseburger, how are you? Welcome to the show. I'm glad that you like the channel and I'm glad that you're here with us tonight. Once again, my internet service is not the best tonight, so I do apologize. Brand new internet service tomorrow. That's the fastest I could get it. So, Rosie, how are you? Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I didn't realize how much stuff I had. It's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. How about a black-eyed kids experience? Prince Allah, how are you? This happened while visiting family for Christmas this holiday season. Before I describe what happened, I've never been a serious believer in anything paranormal. Despite this, what happened that night still left me a little spooked, and the family members who were also present have been talking about this a lot since. It was Christmas Eve, and my parents and siblings were staying with my extended family at my grandparents' home. My grandparents live in a small town in a rural area, and since it was the night of Christmas Eve, nobody was out. Since we didn't have any, my grandma, my dad, and siblings went to look at Christmas lights. We had a good time, and after a while, we decided to head home. At one point, we were driving down the street in a residential area, and we saw a child walking across the road. My grandma did not see the child and may have even hit it if my dad had told her to stop. There were a few things that were strange about this child. The first thing is that it didn't seem to react to getting so close to a car and almost being injured. It continued across the street unfazed, as if nothing had happened. It was also strange that the kid, who was probably 7 to 10 years old, would be outside alone at night on Christmas Eve. I was confused as to why my grandma didn't react to the child, and when I asked, she said she didn't see it. Keep in mind that my grandma is not that old, being only in her 60s, so she should have been able to see it well enough. Her vision is not all that bad, which makes this whole event that much more unusual. From what I saw, the child was a boy and was wearing green Christmas pajamas and had long brown hair. My sister said it was a girl, but could not agree on the color of clothes she wore. And my dad said it was a boy wearing a coat and a stocking cap. I would usually forget these differences in the description of the child if it weren't for the detail my dad would bring up later. A couple of days later, my dad and I discussed what had happened and seemed bothered by it. He said the child had completely black eyes. I was skeptical, but my dad is usually pretty relaxed and he seemed genuinely concerned, so I listened to him. He insisted that the child had black eyes, and now, several days later, nobody in my family, including myself, has any idea what happened that night. And I've been wondering about this experience since it happened. Maybe I'm just making something out of nothing, but regardless, what happened that night was definitely strange. Penguin, how are you? John Parag, how are you? Randy Man, what's up, buddy? Cryptid Chronicles is a masterpiece, Aramic. It is a masterpiece. Well, I said there's going to be internet issues, Rosie. I feel very healthy. Thank you, Penguin. Yes, I feel very healthy. I've slimmed out, actually getting some sun, getting outside more. So it's definitely nice. Definitely nice. Eli, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it. All right. What time is it? 10:16? We'll do a Lizzo story in a few minutes. All right. I'm Alexander, 20 years old. I live in Austria. Finally got my first real job after graduating technical school, and I'm very happy with my current life. Recent memories started to pop up, and I can barely sleep. I have the feeling I need to finally talk to people about what I witnessed over the course of years. Only 3 people know about this until now: my fiance, my mom, and my granddad. I grew up in a pretty rural area within Austria. We moved there when I was 6, and since then I've seen things. It began by having the feeling of being looked at when passing our windows at night. Initially, I thought it might be just me being a bit scared by the dark. Usually, I saw our cats outside of the windows, and mostly it was nothing. One day, I remember going down and grabbing a bottle of water, and I saw them looking at me from outside. We had a winter garden. I don't know the English term, but it's basically a small room attached to the main building made of glass. In front of the winter garden, from the outside, was a floor made of gravel. There were 2 to 3 different creatures with different heights crawling, their long, skinny arms grayish tone. I would say a mix of gray and slight touch of brown. No hair, just skin. I can't remember the amount of fingers nor toes. I remember the shape, but it didn't count. The reason I said it looked was because they had no eyes. Humanoid body, but very long and skinny. I can only describe their body type like one of those very skinny prepubescent kids at school. The big one was around 2.5 meters in height, since the winter garden was that height as well. The second one was a bit bigger than me when I first saw him, so I assume 1.6 to 1.7 meters. I'm a bit ashamed because I am crying a bit while writing this out. They scared me. Walking around the house, peeking through the second set of windows that were located in front of the kitchen. Kitchen and winter garden were connected. I did not scream, I was shocked. I did not want to move, breathe, look directly at them, or move away. After a time period that I cannot describe, they moved towards the forest that was basically 5 meters away from the house. I ran to my bedroom and hid in my bed under my blanket. The next morning, I decided not to tell my dad nor my mom because it felt so unreal. Did it really go down? Did I actually see something? Was it a dream? The feeling when I saw them was like a curtain falling down. Years passed until I'm 17. I could barely remember what happened, but I gained an insane fear of the outside around our house at night. I felt watched at any time my head peeked at the window, only when there were no snow. I don't know why. At that point, I was only living in my parents' house at the weekend because I had already moved to a house the school had approximately 1.5 hours from my home. It had to have been a Saturday. I went down to make a midnight snack and the curtain fell down. I saw them, having their heads turn into my direction, their movement similar to an animal looking at you when walking to a different spot, peeking, looking, and walking. The shock kicked in and I did not move. After 20 minutes, we had a working clock in the kitchen before it was broken. I moved because they showed no aggression and just looked at me. I turned to get my water, grabbed it, and ran to my room. I cried out of shock, I think. The following months, it happened again and again, to the point I got used to pulling myself together and move. I ate cornflakes while they watched me. At this point, I was already convinced I had turned insane. Everything I saw was an illusion, hyper-realistic schizophrenia. Something like that closely after I turned 18. I know this because that was closely before I moved out because of a dispute with my dad. I started looking a bit closer at how the surroundings react to them. The gravel, the stones moved by them, stepped on. They were moved by their arms and feet just so slightly, just like when you step on them. The shock set in again. I started to cry again. They moved, as always, slowly away around the house in front of the forest. The night that haunted me the most. Every time I try and recall this night, I get a shocked state. There was a balcony in front of my window. That was also a door that I could open fully. In front of the balcony was a gravel floor, so basically the winter garden's roof was my balcony. It was very warm that night, so I had my window door open fully and the curtain blocking the potential insects from flying inside. I was lying on my bed trying to sleep. I could hear steps on the gravel. Could have been cats, but I kept listening. I used the indirect light from the screen of my smartphone towards the curtain. The curtain moves barely to the side. The head peeked in. The biggest one of them climbed up onto the winter garden atop of the balcony. Shock set in. My body doesn't want to move out of fear. Head moves backwards and the curtain wiggles a bit. I heard the gravel sounds. I moved away a few weeks later because I couldn't do my mandatory internship from there. I never saw them again. Afterward, I finally started talking about them with my mom and fiance and later granddad. I am already very sorry for my poor structure and also lack of detail. This more out of the heart. Currently watching Stranger Things with my fiance on Netflix, and it brought up a lot of trauma. Thank you for allowing me. Big John, how are you? Maggie Mayhem, how are you? I have, Prince. Some out of Napa and Sonoma County, yes. Also, can you also send the email to submit encounters? Yes. Give me 1 second. Prince Aila. Here is my email. There's my email. It is right under Hercules. How does a bald man run his fingers through his hair? I do not know. I do not know. Do we know? He cuts his. Oh, Jesus. Michael, how are you? Margie, how are you? Farscape. What's Farscape? Erica, how are you? Steven, how are you, buddy? We got 5 minutes until we can do a Lizzo story. So let me find a quick encounter. This one's pretty cool. This one's actually 2 experiences. So Edith, how are you? Arabic! Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Always nice. Thank you so much, Arabic. Thank you. You are truly a blessing to the channel. This encounter happened last summer, and I'm finally writing it out. For context, I'm a 20-year-old guy living in eastern Norway. This encounter happened when I was 19, either June or July of 2025. My dad and I went on a 400-ish kilometer drive to the west side of Norway to pick up a car for my sister. And on the way back home, I was driving a little yellow Mini Cooper that we had picked up, and my dad drove his Subaru in front of me. We took the whole trip without any rest stops to save time. We had made pretty good progress on the way home when it started to get a bit darker, since it was about 1 or 2 in the morning. Norwegian summer nights don't really get dark too far north, so visibility wasn't that bad. The road was quite narrow and not at all straight, constant turns to the left and right down from the quite mountainous area, I guess. On the way down, we saw a couple of moose by the road, which was right next to the forest, and a bit further down the road, I spotted what I thought was another moose and told my dad we were on the phone pretty much the whole way. He was about 100 meters in front of me and did not see the animal. I saw it when I entered the left turn around the bend and realized almost immediately that it was not a moose. I instead thought it was some kind of deer. It was only a couple of meters away from the car at its closest, and it was quite massive. It looked young, though, which I thought was weird for such a large animal. I had never seen a deer before, so I wasn't sure it was one, but it didn't quite look like another animal I knew about. So I really didn't think too much about it. But when I got home, again, I Googled Norwegian deer. and I realized it looked nothing like what I saw. After a lot more Googling, I found out that there are only four species of deer in Norway, those being moose elk, red deer, roe deer, and reindeer. The animal I saw that day didn't look like any of them. It almost looked like a combination of them all in a way, but I'm not sure. It was at least 2 meters tall at the top of its head. It didn't have any antlers. The face looked almost baby like, as it as in it was slightly round and chubby. Its fur was also quite light colored, almost like sand, but a bit more orangish brown. The head wasn't shaped like a moose. It wasn't as long. The legs were long and quite thin. The body wasn't fat either, but it looked like a healthy weight for whatever this animal was. The animal was facing me. We made eye contact for a brief moment. I was driving about 50 kilometers an hour. I saw the animal for maybe 5 seconds, which isn't a very long time, but more than enough to know what it looked like. The animal never moved when I saw it, just stood there looking at me. I've thought about this encounter many times since it happened and would love to hear other people's ideas on what this thing may have been. My second encounter. This encounter happened on the 25th of May, 2026, in eastern Norway. I'm 20 now. I was walking through a forest alone close to where I live. I heard a bunch of weird noises I couldn't barely make sense of. I don't even know how to explain them. I never heard anything like it, but as I was walking, I got to a clearing and decided to walk through it and into the forest on the other side. I say clearing, but it was quite dense in vegetation. It was a clearing in the sense that there were no trees, just a lot of brush and stuff. Not the easiest to walk through, but as I made a little over halfway through the brush, there was an actual clearing with only grass, like a little circle, and there was this weird white stuff on some of the grass there, probably from when they chopped down all of the trees in this clearing. I walked through the rest of the brush and made it back into the forest. I kept walking for a minute. I suddenly felt something. As I turned to the right, I saw what looked like a head of a moose about 50 meters away. I fully stopped, and as I stood there looking at it, trying to see if this moose, or was it just vegetation in the shape of a moose head, and after a couple of seconds, it moved up a bit to get eye contact with me. It was definitely an animal, but it seemed too big, way too big. A moose's head is typically around 60 to 65 centimeters long, but this one was well over a meter. I've never seen anything like it. It just sat there staring at me while I was standing there staring at it. I lost the staring contest, however, and I turned around and left the forest. It felt like I was not welcome there. Almost like what I saw was the ruler of this forest, which made me think of the movie The Ritual, one of my favorite movies. Maybe what I saw was some kind of forest god. I'm not saying it is, but I'm not ruling it out. Let me know if anyone has any theories. I'd love to know what you guys think. Thank you. Andy Davis, how are you, buddy? Is it time for a Lizzo story? All right. All right, here we go. I've got two of them, and here we go. I couldn't think of an idea for the second story, so this one I'm giving a shout out to Rachel on this one. Here we go. Between the flat-topped mesas of nothing special Nevada and the endless chain of dusty highways that some maps have forgot to name, there existed a place that was both a beacon and a warning sign. Marty's 24-hour diner and truck stop. The neon signage flickered good eats and good times in a jaundiced pink. A rusted sign out front read, "Welcome to Anywhere Earth." Those who passed through knew that they were about to cross the boundary between the mundane and the absurd. Marty himself never bothered to show up after a late night shift. He had left the kitchen 3 years ago after a dangerous encounter with a raccoon that tasted like burnt ends. The place was now ruled by Lizzo, the queen of the lot, a sprawling parking apron where the truckers' rigs loomed like metallic behemoths, and where the ladies of the lot, otherwise known as the truck stop prostitutes, ran the nightly business that spoiled any notion of family friendly. Lizzo was a towering figure, both in stature and reputation. She wore a silver jumpsuit that glittered under the diner's flickering fluorescence, a crown made of bottle caps, and a grin that could charm a dead engine back to life. She owned the lot, the diner's kitchen, the jukebox that only played good as hell, and the loyalty of every trucker who pulled in for coffee, chili, or a quick thirst. Earl Big Rig Johnson was the de facto deputy, a hulking 6'4" man with a beard that seemed to have its own zip code. He could lift a 20-ton trailer with a single hand and still have the strength to prod his haired kitchen staff into shape. Earl's favorite line, muttered as he polished the chrome of the semi, was, "If the road ain't straight, the coffee's still hot." One balmy Tuesday evening, as the desert wind whispered through the tattered awnings, Lizzo gathered her court in the back booth. The table was a mess of greasy plates, half-empty coffee mugs, and a stack of men's ties that had been used as makeshift napkins. The ladies of the lot, all in mismatched heels and satin robes, sipped on cheap bourbon, while the truckers, half asleep, half buzzed, exchanged stories about haunted mile markers and the ghost of the phantom fuel pump. "Hey, Earl," called Lizzo. "You think this stew needs a little more life?" Earl snorted. "If you're talking about the assassin's chili, I'm down. But if it's love you want, you'll have to ask the gods of the world belly." The night was still, and the only sound the low hum of idling engines and the clatter of the last-minute order of all-you-can-eat bonanza being thrown together by Mona, the youngest kitchen hand who had a reputation for accidentally setting the fryers on fire once. The stage was set for the usual brand new slice of trucker folklore drifting into the greasy air. The doors burst open on a thunderous crash, rattling the aluminum frame. Jack, a lanky, oil-smeared long hauler with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, barreled in, his eyes wild and his tie hanging loose like a victim of a savage wind tunnel. He slammed his palm on a countertop, sending the teetering pile of soda cans clattering to the floor. "Worm! It's a—" He didn't finish the sentence before any of the regulars could press the dismiss button on his frantic chatter. The rear door of the diner's attached garage banged open again. A slick, slimy mess slithered in, dripping in otherworldly slime that glowed in unsettling amber under the dim lights. The creature was horrendous. Fleshy tube the size of a semi-trailer, punctuated with rows of snapping mandibles that scraped against the concrete like knives on a blackboard. It lunged, its maw opening wide enough to swallow a 53-foot rig in one gulp. Nearby, a rusted 1978 Peterbilt belonging to Bobby Bob Two Buttons, a trucker who had lost a thumb in a prior skirmish with a rogue raccoon, was yanked from his berth. The tires squealed a high-pitched whine as the creature, serrated teeth ripped into the rubber, bursting it into a spray of black smoke. Two other truckers, the hulking Mac Monarch of Clyde and the low-riding Kenworth of Megan, hung helpless at the ends of the line, their drivers frozen in horror. The creature, dubbed the Worm by those who would be soon part of the legend, loped forward, its muscular body leaving a trail of acidic slime. Trucks trembled, glasses shattered, and a couple of the ladies of the lot screamed, "It's eating us!" in perfect, practiced horror, part scream, part advertisement. In the midst of panic, Jack managed to choke out, It ate two truckers, one lady of the night, and bit a tire off." The diner fell into deafening silence, broken only by the creature's wet, gurgling chuckle. Lizzo stood on a chair. The crown of bottle caps rattled, her voice booming over the din. "Ain't no tremor BS happening here." She meant it. She wasn't about to let some alien worm ruin her Tuesday night. The phrase echoed across the parking lot like a battled cry. She listened to the old trucker tales about Tremor, the dreaded imagined company that ran the road and would scrabble your havoc. But this was real and definitely not the corporate PR scam. Earl, muscles flexed with his ergonomic coffee training, shouted, "All right, you slimy pile. Let's get you tossed out of here, the way we toss bad beans." The battle plan. Lizzo said, "Sal, the dean of the lot's drifters, the guy who never spent a night in a real bed. If you can distract it long enough, we can rig a big old hydraulic lever from the garage. It'll slam the whole garage door shut, maybe crushing it in the process." Lizzo nodded, her eyes narrowed. She leaned closer to the central table, whispering to the assorted patrons. "Ladies, we're going to need a little enthusiasm. Mendez, hold the grill. Down low. We need a grease slick. And Mona, get the fire extinguisher. We'll use it as a blunderbuss. Earl, grab the chain. We're going to..." At that moment, the worm's mouth opened again, a guttural whirl as it swallowed Sally the siren, a veteran of the lot who normally sang lullabies to nervous drivers. She let out a gargle that sounded like a broken saxophone as it reared back, its belly bulging with the unfortunate occupants. It seemed to thrash its tail against the main entrance, rattling the metal siding. Enter the kitchen brigade. Mona was shaking but determined, half full bottle of full swooped up a half full spray bottle of industrial grade pepper spray, the kind they usually use to chase raccoons out of the soft serve machine. She hurled it toward the creature's exposed eye, one of those monstrous, unblinking chasms that looked like an abyss. The spray hit it, causing a violent spasm. The worm recoiled, belching out a gaseous plume that smelled like burnt rubber and stale coffee. At the same time, Lizzo handed a jug of bourbon to Earl. "Drink it. Your liver's got more firepower than you think, big boy." He gulped it down as the liquid burned his throat, then slammed it to the ground, sending a shockwave through the cement. The tunnel vibrated, and the tiny sparks flew from the bolts on the wall. Sal, guided by a glimmer of courage, or perhaps a neon glare, sprinted toward the garage hydraulic lever. He, with a hunter's stealth, loped the chain from Earl's belt around the lever's crank. The massive crane that once hoisted pallets now served as a gruesome new purpose, a giant trap. "Ready, pigskin!" yelled Lizzo as she took an old rusted kitchen spatula, a paddle, and wielded it like a sword, slashing at the worm's exposed, senseless flesh. The creature hissed as the spatula struck it like a lightning bolt against its oatmeal-covered skin. The wagon's hydraulic clamp jerked. The massive garage door, battered by the worm's flailing, rolled into a deafening metallic screech. It slammed shut with an impact that made the truck shudder like a boxer's chin. The worm, wedged between the door and its own bulked-up tail, screamed a guttural, otherworldly shriek that reverberated through every rusted bolt and rattled glass. The end. The door remained locked. The worm thrashed wildly against it, its limbs contorting like a disoriented river. The slime that had soaked the first row of trucks began to curdle and pull away, as if the creature's bodily fluids were turning into a solid mass. Bobby Bob Two Buttons, the trucker who had just escaped a tooth that had almost chewed off his ear, ran forward, barely alive, his container of coffee spilling onto the floor, the liquid blackening like charcoal ink. With a powerful heave, he helped push against the hindrance while Earl kept the chain taut. Together, they added enough force that the garage door cracked the worm's spine. The creature's massive body shuddered and then gave one final cataclysmic groan. Its head flexed, the mandibles clicking like an unlocked door. A gush of smoke erupted from its wound, and within seconds, the worm was nothing more than a pile of smoldering ash and crushed metal. Its body flattened into a wrinkled, dying mass that resembled a crater of a meteor. The diner's neon flickered, then steadied. The kitchen staff, breathing hard, stared at the aftermath. The ladies of the night/lot, shaken but still somewhat poised, retrieved their hats as if they had merely been misplaced. Lizzo, her crown now dented, stepped down from her chair, her voice layered with humor over horror. Well, folks, that was a Tuesday night to remember. No tremor bullshit, no worm, just a little tourist attracted by the smell of bacon. Let's clean up and get a new batch of coffee going. Anyone thirsty? Earl, wiping his forearms on a rag, laughed a deep, raspy laugh. You know what they say? When you got a worm in your garage, you don't call the exterminator, you call the lunch lady. The truckers clapped each other on the back, the bellies full of adrenaline and the lingering scent of Lizzo's bourbon. The ladies of the lot took a moment to pay the tribute to Sally, who finally floated upward as a sort of neon-lit ghost, humming a soft lullaby that made the silence between the revving engines feel strangely comforting. Mona, still shaking, whispered, "Is that legal?" Lizzo smiled, a mischievous gold-toothed grin. Legal? No. Fun? Absolutely. She lifted the bottle caps from her crown and tossed them onto the greasy table. Let's hear that jukebox. Give me a good as hell on repeat. We just survived an alien worm. If we can do that, any Tuesday night is a win. The jukebox sputtered, but then miraculously blared Lizzo's Good as Hell. The words filled the smog-filled space, dancing over the cracked floorboards and the partially melted hydraulic lever. Outside, the desert wind settled, the stars above twinkling like distant headlights. The diner, though battered, still stood. The neon sign flickered proudly, a beacon for weary truckers, lonely drifters, and the ever-present lot lizards. As the night receded, the memories of the worm's terror faded, becoming a new legend against the grease-stained tales that already filled the worn corridor of Marty's. In the early hours, when the last of the trucks had disappeared into the abyss of nowhere, the diner's lights dimmed. The kitchen staff, the ladies, and Earl gathered around a battered wooden table, sharing a pot of coffee that tasted more like triumph than caffeine. Lizzo raised a chipped mug, her eyes reflecting the neon glow. To another Tuesday night survived. May the road be long, the coffee be strong, and the worms, well, may they stay in the movies. Everyone clinked their mugs, a chorus of clamor that echoed through the broken windows and into the desert night. Somewhere far away, a lone caravan of trucks carried a story of a worm, a queen, and the diner that refused to bow. And on a stretch between somewhere and nowhere, the legend of Lizzo's lot grew, whispered between truck stop diners for years to come, always meant to be told on Tuesdays, when the night is darkest, the coffee strongest, and the possibility of alien worms just maybe gives everyone something new to brag about. Thank you guys. Hope you guys liked it. Hope you liked it. Thank you, Aramic. Appreciate you. What's up, Alan? How are you, buddy? I am well. I am well. Thank you for asking. DB Mac. I think it's wrong. The only one company makes the game Monopoly. Yes, I do agree. I do agree. Black Eyed Kids story for y'all. A few years back, I was awake, lying in bed. It was a quiet Sunday morning. I'm usually the first one awake in my house on the weekend, married, 3 kids. I remember this so vividly and clearly because we were in the middle of painting our bedroom and had the curtains off, and the room was blindingly bright. I was awake in bed for about 10 minutes, just lying there, my wife asleep, thinking of the day ahead, when I heard someone coming up the stairs. Our home is about 120 years old, creaky original flooring. I've heard this sound hundreds of times from my room, typical layout at the top of the stairs, one main hall with all our bedroom doors branching off, mine being the last one at the end of the hall. I can tell which door in the hall someone is walking to with my eyes closed, and certainly know if someone is coming to mine because I'm the last door. Oftentimes, my kids go downstairs for water early, and I assumed this was the case. I heard the steps coming up the stairs, and once they reached the top, I could tell they were coming to my room. So, lying still, I turned my head to greet what I thought was one of my kids. What happened next is burned into my memory forever. A small head peered from the door frame, looking directly at me, maybe 3.5 feet from the floor. All I see is what looks like a boy with almost black hair, a disheveled bowl cut, white skin, and black, rough cut holes for eyes. We were both startled, and it immediately dashed away. To this day, I don't know what launched me forward. My instinct was to either convince myself what I saw and catch this thing, or find out it was one of my kids and I was hallucinating. It was literally a second and a half between the time I saw it and me leaping to the doorway looking into the hall. This thing just vanished. I went into my daughter's room one by one, and they were all very much asleep. I searched the house, the basement, the attic, nothing. The house has many stories I could share with you guys, but this one was unlike anything I had ever had happen prior or since. What board game does Black Eyed Kids play, Nikola Tesla? I don't know where SDL is. I don't know. I'm 48-year-old guy. Lived near Willow Creek for almost 15 years. I've seen coyote, deer, bobcat, raccoon, and just about every other critter that comes through here. Last night at around 10 p.m., I was taking my usual walk around the creek trail behind the neighborhood. I had my flashlight, but wasn't really using it much because there was enough moonlight to see the path. Halfway down the trail, I noticed something standing near a patch of tall grass about 60 to 70 yards away. At first, I figured it was a deer, then it moved. The best way I can describe it is that it looked too heavy to be a coyote, but too lean to be a bear. It was moving on 4 legs. Its shoulders seemed unusually high. Every few steps, it would stop and just stare in my direction. The strange part was how quiet it was. No rustling, no stamping branches, nothing. I stopped walking and shined my flashlight toward it. For a second, the beam caught what looked like two reflective eyes. Then it turned and disappeared into the brush. Maybe it was a huge coyote and my eyes were playing tricks on me in the dark. That's honestly the most likely explanation, right? Still, I've walked the trail hundreds of times and never gotten that feeling before. The feeling that something was watching me before I even noticed it. Thanks for letting me share. Larry Linman, holy crap, 50 new members. Thank you, Mr. Linman. Appreciate you, buddy. Too kind. Too kind. Aramic and Larry Linman, thank you so much, guys. That is freaking awesome. Wow, 50 new members. Guys, wow, thank you so much. I really can't even, I can't, thank you. Larry, thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate you. I really do. No, Aramic, you always look good, buddy. You all. More rural, M1000. I'm about, I'd say 10 minutes from Vermont now. Literally 10 minutes to Vermont. Like there's out back here is a field, a huge field. Across the street is woods and more fields, rivers, and just cool shit all around. It's pretty awesome. It's actually quite peaceful. Quite peaceful. I am truly blessed. I have not had I've not had so much kind of peace, I guess, and tranquility in a long time. In a long time. Donna Harmon, how are you? Yes, some definitely serenity. Definite serenity. Maple syrup, yes. Actually, there's a place that I'm going to have breakfast here soon with Rachel, and they make their own maple syrup. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jane. Yes, I will, Aramic. I will. Actually, I have a PO box now. I got a PO box, and it's so cool that this little town that I live in now, there's a post office, like this tiny little post office. And I went in and I explained, what I do and why I need a post office box and stuff like that. And I left because I had to fill out the paperwork and stuff. I come back and Rachel and I walk in, and the lady's like, I was thinking, because of what you talk about on your YouTube channel, wouldn't PO Box 13 be the best box for you? And I said, absolutely. So I got PO Box 13. It's freaking awesome. But I will email you. I will email it to you, Aramic, so you have it. Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. All right. Although I've used a Ouija board on 3 separate occasions, which I am sure did not help matters, I've experienced what I can only describe as consecutive misfortune since I was 5 years of age. I'm now 40. At times, I've wondered whether I am dealing with a generational curse, some form of spiritual attachment, or both. I've witnessed unexplained aerial objects on 3 occasions, 91 again, 2008. I saw luminous orbs. Both sightings seemed to precede periods of extreme misfortune. 2019, I observed a solid craft hovering near Interstate 77 during a sunny afternoon. It was clearly visible against the cloudless blue sky and resembled the craft depicted in the film Flight of the Navigator. I have also experienced streetlights shutting off as I've walked beneath them. Each time it was one particular light in a row of functioning lamps. This occurred on streets in 2 different towns. These incidents could have been coincidental equipment failure, but the repetition seemed unusual. Lichen subscription? Lichen subscription. Aramik, lichen? Explain that real quick and then I'll start over. Lichen. Yes, Jay Cortez, I moved. That's why I didn't do a live last week. Yep, new stash. Got the stash going. Feeling good. Actually, I'm probably healthier than I've been in years, to be honest with you. I pretty much new heart. Yeah. What did you mean by subscription? Werewolf subscription? Oh, a joke. A joke. Okay, hang on. Let me find it. Hang on, I gotta find the joke. Mute. There, man. Right now I'm having before. I can't find it. How do you support Werewolf's YouTube channel? Like and subscribe. Oh, shit. That is funny as shit. Good one. That is probably the most clever dad joke ever. I like that one. That was good. All right. Back to this. Sorry. I've also experienced street lights shutting off as I walked beneath them. Each time it was on a particular night in a row of functioning lamps. This occurred on streets in 2 different towns. These incidents could have been coincidental equipment failure, but the repetition seemed unusual. I've also experienced dreams that appeared to predict later events. During the past year, several objects have vanished. One was a pair of pliers that had been lying only a few inches away from me beside the kitchen sink. Rosie, thank you so much. I briefly turned towards a cabinet, and when I looked back, the pliers were gone. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment, so there are not too many places where they could have been misplaced. The pliers have never been found. The most disturbing experience involved the sensation of negative entities around me and inside my home. During periods of heightened activity, these presence seem particularly strong in the early morning hours, especially around 3 a.m. when I fall asleep early. I frequently awake at about 2:30 to 3:30 a.m. I believe these forces may be attached to me. I have Aramek! Thank you, buddy. Forces may be attached to me. I have sought assistance from paranormal investigators whom I have seen on TV and found online. Most ignore me. Others offered service at a substantial fee. I've also contacted Catholic priests and clergy members from other denominations. Most did not respond. One well-known man described as a Catholic Monsignor and exorcist essentially told me to get lost when I requested a blessing or deliverance. He stopped responding after learning that I was not Catholic. I am uncertain about the true nature of whatever has plagued me for this long, but the one constant has been nearly continuous misfortune, even during rare periods when something positive happens. A damaging event when often follows almost immediately, either counteracting or completely nullifying the good fortune. I am not insane. I have maintained a career involving complex corporate work for nearly 20 years. Still, I understand that people may question my mental state when I describe the full pattern. Whatever is whatever this phenomenon may be, it also seems to prevent me from receiving help. At times, it appears to work through other people. Complete strangers have displayed an immediate and extreme dislike to me before I even get to speak to them. It is almost as though something briefly influenced them or they detected something around me that caused an instinctive reaction. As a child and adolescent, I was repeatedly abused by an adult woman. Perpetrators include teachers, babysitters, family acquaintances, extended family members, and strangers. Because so many of the attacks against me have been involved women, one relative suggested that I may have some form of succubus like attachment. I've survived multiple fatal experiences. I have suffered some sudden illnesses and medical problems, encountered immense difficult finding employment, and was nearly beaten to death more than once as a child. I nearly drowned in a swimming pool. On one occasion, I received a modest financial windfall, only to be hospitalized with two severe illnesses 2 weeks later. The treatment consumed every penny. More recently, I was diagnosed with a medical condition while I had no health insurance. The resulting treatment left me more than six figures in medical debt. It feels like some kind of demonic hit parade. Below is the timeline showing a pattern. The gaps do not represent peaceful periods. Chronic poverty, abuse, and other hardships continuing these years, even when nothing immediately life threatening has occurred. The only possible clue involves a story told within my family. I was informed that when my mother was an infant, she became part of an agreement between her mother and a witch. My grandmother allegedly broke the agreement. I have wondered whether the consequences resulted in generational curses. My mother has also experienced terrible misfortune throughout her life as well. It is important to note that many of my experiences began before I used the Ouija board. Therefore, I do not believe the board created the original problem. However, I suspect that using it may have intensified the situation. Between the ages of 5 and 17, I was repeatedly abused. At 5, I was struck and run over by a group of bicyclists. They claimed that they had never seen me standing directly in front of them. They would have continued riding if my mom had not chased them and confronted them. 7, I nearly drowned in a swimming pool while surrounded by other kids. I was rescued at the last possible moment. 9, I required surgery for physical injuries resulting from the abuse. 10, I used the Ouija board for the first time with our landlady. She later abused me. Afterward, her behavior became inexplicably hostile, and she forced my family to leave the property. Also at 10, we moved into a house that, unknown to us, was owned by a criminal family. Police later raided the residence while searching for a dangerous member of that family. Officers pointed shotguns and weapons at me, and I was nearly shot. I used a Ouija board for the second time during that period. At the age of 15, a group of approximately 12 boys nearly beat me to death while I was walking to school. 2 months later, I was badly assaulted by a military employed son of a disgruntled landlord. This is the only partial timeline, but it demonstrates a pattern. For years, I have attempted to find someone who could help me break the apparent cycle of misery. My experiences with religious organizations have been equally disappointing. I have been unable to obtain holy water or blessed objects. This may be for the best, since I have read that improper uses of such objects could make the matters worse. Anyway, thank you for allowing me to share, and I hope someone can give me some sort of answer. Demonic, I'm thinking some demonic attachment. Definitely demonic attachment. Yes, definitely demonic. I don't know. It makes you wonder about the witch thing. That witch thing is pretty weird if you really think about that. Like a bargain with the witch and the mom. Like, come on now. All right. While I was in the Marine Corps station in Okinawa, Japan in 1995, I was assigned to a shooting range near Camp Schwab to guard ammunition. This happened sometime in August. At about 9:05 p.m., I was just completed a radio check with the range control to confirm everything was okay. The bugs were attacking me, so I pulled my poncho up over my entire body to get away from them. The next thing I knew, my poncho was being pulled off of me. When I looked up, I saw what would be best described as a typical gray alien standing over me. The difference was that its skin was more almond colored. It was very bright night because of the full moon, so I could see it clearly enough. There appeared to be four others standing behind it. What shocked me even more was that they tried to talk to me. The sound was strange and muffled, almost like an adult character in the Peanuts cartoon. Wah, 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 wah. I remember becoming completely unhinged. I jumped up, started screaming when it spoke to me. Then it disappeared along with the others. The other Marine who was guarding munition with me woke up when he heard me screaming. He asked what was wrong. I told him what happened. He looked at me like I was crazy. And that's when I noticed it was 10:45 p.m. I could not understand it. I know I didn't fall asleep because I did my radio watch. I also know that this is not a dream, but I can't account for the missing time. I did not want to radio in what happened because I was afraid I would be sent for psych eval. At the same time, I knew that an intruder near the ammunition dump was serious and should be reported. The other Marine told me he had been asleep the entire time and did not see or hear anything until I started screaming and jumping around. I kept quiet about the incident for a few days, but it kept bothering me. Finally, about a week later, I told a couple of my friends. A good friend of mine, who had been out there the day before, said that the almost same thing happened to him. In his case, he said that he chased one of them into the ammo tent, and when he was just about to shoot it, it disappeared. He said he had also been afraid to say anything because he thought people would think he was crazy. I've never seen bright lights or any alien spacecraft, so I don't really know. Thank you. Adam Condon, how are you, buddy? Good seeing you. Why do folks in Alabama keep the diploma in the front windshield of their car? So they. Oh my God. Jeez, crow. 59th, how are you, buddy? Good seeing you. Barely Human, send that story my way, please. Please and please. I'd like to hear it. My girlfriend and I were fishing at a stone quarry in Sugar Grove, Illinois on May 5th, 1988. The quarry was mostly surrounded by cornfields with some small patches of light forest and shrubbery nearby. The sun had just gone down, and since we were behind the stone walls inside the quarry, it was getting darker a little faster than it would have in the open. On one side of the quarry, the stone wall rose about 40 feet. That was the side we were facing while fishing. Behind us, the ground gradually rose toward a cornfield edged by shrubs and small trees. The trees and shrub line was about 15 to 20 yards behind us. We were sitting at the edge of the water thinking about packing up when all of a sudden we heard this very loud roar. I mean, loud. It made both of us jump up instantly. Then it roared or howled again. I could see the outline of a creature with a large head and large eyes. I grabbed my flashlight and shined it toward the creature. Its eyes were very large, ovular shaped, greenish orange, and it roared again. And I could see a very large predator like teeth in its mouth. The creature moved through the trees and shrubs so fast that we could not see it in motion. One moment it was in one spot, the next it was somewhere else. Then it roared again. The sound it made was unlike anything I had ever heard from any animal on this planet, especially in Illinois. I can still mimic the sound. It was very scary. At its closest, the creature was about 10 yards from us. At its furthest, 50 yards away. The eyes reminded me of a large reptile. The next day, I went back to the quarry with a friend to see if we could find any signs of whatever we encountered. I looked for tracks, broken limbs, or anything else that may show where it had been. I found nothing. My buddy and I started fishing. We had been there for about an hour when it started getting. We packed up and began walking up the short path towards my Jeep when both of us suddenly stopped dead in our tracks. Coming across the cornfield at the treetop level was a craft. It had several lights on it, along with one large light that shone down on us for a few seconds. Then the craft made a 45-degree turn, exited the atmosphere in almost a blink of an eye. The craft made no sound at all. We were pretty much surrounded by the stone quarry, and it was so quiet that you could have heard a pin drop. But this craft made absolutely no sound. Thank you. All right. We'll do this experience and then the next Lizzo story. It was the winter of 1997, or at least that is how I remember it. I was living in Ketchikan, Alaska, and serving in the National Guard as a 11B infantryman. I loved it. At the time, the Joint Task Force, made up of different military branches, had started working on a road project near Annette Island. The road was connecting to a long-standing agreement involving the Native community. It was a major project, and I believe it was eventually finished around 2007. The Marines had spent the first summer building the headquarters there. By the time they were done, the camp consisted mostly of plywood huts and the frame of a mess hall. When summer ended, those huts were a little more than sheds. There was no electricity or running water. Then 5 other members of my unit and I were called to active duty. Our job was to live on the island through the winter and protect the camp. We've been told that local youths sometimes traveled from island to island, vandalizing empty logging cabins and similar sites. For budget reasons, the assignment was classified as a training mission. At first, it sounded like it may be too good. 6 months in the winter, on a remote island, living in a plywood hut. What could go wrong? Things were rocky from the start. Usually, there were only 4 or 5 of us on the island at any given time, with a weekend rotation every 2 or 3 weeks for 1 or 2 men. It took a couple of months before we had proper generator or propane for cooking. So, for quite a while, we survived on MREs, 3 meals a day. Worst part was the outhouse. There was only one in the entire camp, and it was several hundred yards from where we slept. To make matters worse, the ground had been declared sacred, so we were not allowed to relieve ourselves anywhere else. If You needed to take a leak, or worse, you had to march all the way down to the outhouse in the middle of the night in the Alaskan winter. For the most part, though, I was enjoying it. We bonded, told jokes, played push up poker, and generally had a good time roughing it. Then the heart of the winter arrived, and that's when the snow came. Lots of snow. By then, we had these odd heaters that ran on diesel fuel, so the huts were fairly cozy. The one place that was not heated was the outhouse. Not only was it freezing, but it was also filled up. The boat used to bring a portable toilet truck had been blocked by ice. By the third month of our stay, the contents of the outhouse were dangerously close to overflowing. It was disgusting, it was freezing, and it became my nightmare. Give me a slit trench over a outhouse any day of the week. Even now, thinking about the massive frozen mound makes me cringe. I can still picture the steam rising. But the outhouse, as bad as it was, is not the frightening part of this. One night, four of us were lying in our cots getting ready for bed. A few of us were listening to a book on tape that Doc had brought with him. I think it was Carl Sagan's Contact for entertainment. It was either that or Art Bell's Coast to Coast, which was about only English language program we could pick up. If then you know the show covered aliens, Bigfoot, and other kinds of paranormal subjects. That night, that may not sound scary, but out there, we rarely heard anything, or even during the day. There was not much activity in the middle of winter in the middle of nowhere. At first, we thought it may be local kids coming to mess with us, tag the place up, or set something on fire. That seemed logical. Before we arrived on the island, we had been shown nearby logging camps that had been badly vandalized. We were warned the same thing could happen to our camp if we didn't protect it. If it had been vandals, we would have been ready for them, or at least we wanted to be. The truth was, because this was classified as a training exercise, we had rifles, but no ammunition. We had M16s, but nothing to put in them. We were no longer lying on our cots. We were getting dressed, discussing who was going to investigate the sound. Then the sounds came right up to our door. Whatever was outside did not sound human. We could hear it breathing. It was loud, heavy breathing, huffing, snorting. Our PFC had just been picked to lead the charge, but he flatly refused. None of us blamed him. Nobody wanted this to turn into some Alaskan version of Southern Comfort meets the Predator. So we sat there in silence for 10 minutes while the huffing and snorting continued. Eventually, the sounds faded away. A few minutes later, we worked up the nerve to open the door. Immediately, we saw tracks in the snow, the largest canine prints ever. I swear they were the size of pie plates. Whatever was attached to those paws had to have been the size of a small horse, or at least as big as a dining room table. That changed everything. Remember that the outhouse several hundred yards away before that happened, if you woke up in the middle of the night and needed to relieve yourself, you made the hike. After seeing those tracks, nobody was doing that anymore. Instead, we created a massive patch of yellow snow right next to the hut's door. It became customary to open the door, point to the side, and melt some snow. There was no way on God's green earth any of us were walking all the way to the isolated outhouse with those things out there. Aramaic! Thank you, brother. Our NCOIC returned from the weekend at Kitchikin with his diving light. It was the brightest flashlight I had ever seen. The thing turned night into day. One night, we're joking around, smoking. We started teasing PFC because he had to use the outhouse for more than just a quick leak. It was not like he could just hang himself out the door. That was something we wanted to find when spring came and generals and dignitaries came through. The PFC finally began gathering up the courage to make his walk. He got fully dressed for the freezing cold and opened the door. As he was about to step outside, the sergeant switched on the diving light and aimed it down the outhouse. He was actually trying to help by lighting the way. As the beam poured down the hill, we could see the outhouse. Standing next to it was a wolf. Its eyes lit up like two moon. It was staring straight at us and not moving. Even though we were about 300 feet away, PFC immediately backed deeper into the hut. The sergeant kept his diving light fixed on the unholy sized wolf until the light started to overheat. The wolf saw us. It knew there were more than one of us, yet it did not move an inch. It just stood there staring at us while we stared back at it. When the sergeant finally turned off the diving light, the wolf was still standing there, still watching us. We were the ones who had to break eye contact with it and close the door. The wolf knew it was in charge. We knew it as well. And actually, to this day, none of us believed that it was a wolf. That's what we just called it. Thanks, guys. George, happy birthday, buddy. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. That's awesome. Wow, great. I hope you're having a wonderful day on your birthday, buddy. Huh. All right. Do I hear George, this Lizzo story goes out to you and your birthday, buddy. I hope Lizzo treats you right tonight. How does a two-stroke engine take nitrous? And not seize up? That's pretty crazy. Boof it, Andy Davis. Isn't that how you do it? Yes, Jonathan. I had my own encounter uh, in '94. What do you call a cryptid who loves to travel? A wanderoo guru. Oh, I know you did. I know you butt chug it, Davis. I know you were a fecal freak. All right, George, this one goes out to you, buddy. The night the sky over the Oklahoma desert decided to bleed, the neon glow of the Longhorn Diner flickered like a dying cigarette. Rain hammered on the roof, drumming a rhythm made the 18-wheeler tires glisten as they stood idled on the cracked tarmac. Inside, the clatter of grease, spattered pans, and was punctuated by the low hum of the country rock jukebox. Somewhere behind the counter, the whirl of the old dishwasher tried futilely to keep up with Earl Big Rig Johnson's relentless orders of extra coffee. Lizzo, queen of every lot lizard that ever set eyes on a shiny chrome bumper, perched high up on a stool at the end of the bar. She was a sight to behold. Bright eyes hidden behind a fringe of neon lipstick, a glittering sequenced coat that caught the rain splattered light and turned it into something akin to a disco ball. Her throne was a battered booth upholstered in faded red vinyl, the kind of seat that had seen more boot heels than a truck stop could count. She surveyed her kingdom with a smirk, the grizzled truckers with their endless stories of the road, the drifters who showed up with nothing but a guitar and a dream, the kitchen staff who could fry an egg faster than Earl could refuel his rig, and the girls of the night, her loyal lot lizards, who ensured every weary traveler left with a tall tale. Earl, a hulking man with a permanent 5 o'clock shadow and a grin that could crack a biscuit, slid into the booth opposite of Lizzo. He was her boy toy, but more than that, the co ruler of the kingdom of grease and gasoline. He lifted his coffee mug, nodded, and whispered, "Another long night, love." Lizzo chuckled, her laugh a low rumble like a diesel engine. "It's always a long night when the rain decides to drown the highway, Earl, and the road's never empty. They're coming." Just then, a low guttural sound rolled into the parking lot, a sound that seemed to vibrate the very metal of the trucks. The diner's neon sign flickered, then sputtered, and the doorway of shadow opened between two rusted semi-trailers. From the darkness emerged a figure so absurd it could have been a trick of the rain, yet the sheer weight of its presence silenced even the relentless drumming on the roof. Satan, tall, clad in a charcoal suit that seemed woven from smoke, horns curling like the antennae on a busted antenna tower, held a leash that dangled to the ground. At the end of the leash was a man wrapped from head to toe in a tight, black leather, every joint bound with straps, a ball gag that clicked once with each step. It was Saddam Hussein, the former dictator, now reduced to a pet like companion, his eyes hidden behind mirrored goggles. The two looked like they had just stepped straight out of a sadistic industrial BDSM lounge and onto the tarmac of Lizzo's kingdom. The two grotesque figures approached the diner's front door, their footsteps splashed through the puddles of rain and oil. "Guess we finally found a place worth fighting for," Satan snarled, his voice a blend of gravel and fire. "You think your little kingdom can hold against the infernal heat of hell?" Lizzo lifted the edge of her sequenced coat, brushed a strand of glittering hair away from her face. "You chose the wrong lot, sweetheart. It's my turf, and Earl's rig is bigger than your ego." Earl rose, his massive frame casting a shadow that swallowed the neon sign for a heartbeat. He cracked his knuckles, feeling a familiar snap that made even the most seasoned trucker flinch. "You want a brawl? Then let's roll." What followed was the most absurd, frantic, and oddly poetic battle Oklahoma had ever seen. Satan lunged first, his horns wiping through the air like a battering ram. He sent a wave of heat that melted the rain into steam. But the steam met Lizzo's arm. With a flick, she cursed the steam into a frothy bubble, hurling it back toward him. The bubble popped on Satan's cheek, leaving a scorched welt that sizzled like an overfilled fryer. From beyond the kitchen doors, the cooks, armed with ladles and frying pans, charged. One of them, a hulking woman named Mabel, who could lift a half-ton truck with one arm, swung her skillet like a shield. The skillet struck Satan's chest, sending him stumbling into a dumpster that spilled a cascade of oily sludge across the wet pavement. The sludge acted like an instant bog, sucking his boot down to the ankle. While Satan wrestled into his own slip, a line of lot lizards, led by a ferocious figure named Jungle Jane, splashed through the rain, brandishing chains of cheap jewelry. They wrapped their chains around Saddam's leather limbs, yanking him away from the leech. The ball gag fell from his mouth, clattering on the concrete. Saddam snarled, his voice muffled through the gags and restraints, but his eyes, wild and desperate, locked onto Lizzo's. Earl, meanwhile, turned on his trucker instinct, grabbed an old rusted air compressor used to inflate tires and revved it up, and blew a gust of cold air right towards Satan's smoldering horns. The sudden chill made the horns snap back, and a piece of them cracked off, clattering onto the diner's greasy, splattered floor. Satan cursed, turning his gaze to Earl, but Earl was already behind him. A massive steel pipe, borrowed from the kitchen's heavy-duty meat slicer, raised high. Just then, a trio of drifters appeared from the shadows, guitars slung across their backs. They strummed a chord that resonated strangely with the rain and the roar of the diesel engines. The strange vibration seemed to destabilize Satan's infernal field, making his flames flicker like a dying campfire. "Play it louder, boys!" Lizzo shouted, stepping forward from her glittering coat like a queen commanding an orchestra. She reached for the jukebox, swiping the country rock tune from the twisted metal version of Highway to Hell. The music shredded through the rain, echoing off the metal roofs and making the very air vibrate. The battle turned into a chaotic symphony of clangs, hissing steam, cracked horns, and shrieking guitars. Saddam, now free from his leathered shackles, tried to rally, but his attempts were hampered by the sheer ridiculousness of his own attire. A full leather bondage outfit with a ball gag that made him look more like a grotesque mascot than a diabolical warlord. He lunged only to be met by a barrage of fry cooks wielding spatulas like samurai swords. Mabel, the cook, delivered a final blow. Her ladle, smeared with a secret sauce she had been fermenting for months, slammed onto Saddam's knee. The sauce, a thick, sweet and spicy concoction, splattered all over his leather, causing him to slip, stumble, and crash into a stack of pallets. The impact sent a flare of gasoline toward the ground, igniting the spilled oil, creating a temporary ring of fire around him. He howled. A sound was part rage, part absurdity, as the fire licked at his leather. All the while, the rain intensified, turning the parking lot into a slick nightmare, the puddles reflecting deformed images of clashing combatants, making the whole scene look like a hallucinogenic nightmare. Finally, coordinated strike. Earl, Lizzo, Jungle, drifters, and the entire kitchen rushed forward in unison. Earl lifted a massive steel pipe, swinging it down onto Satan's head. The pipe made a deafening clang. Satan's skull cracked open, revealing a pulsating, ember-glowing core. With a scream that sounded like a dying engine, Satan's form erupted into a burst of black smoke and ash, spiraling into the night sky. Saddam, left clutching his leather-smeared knees, tried to crawl away, but the rain created a small vortex that seemed to suck him down into the very earth. With a final desperate howl, the vortex swallowed him whole, sealing the portal that had been opened moments before. As the last of the black smoke faded, the portal snapped shut, leaving nothing but a ragged hole in the fabric of the night, just enough for a stray raccoon to glance through and scuttle away. The Longhorn Diner felt silent. The only sound, the dripping rain from the awnings, Lizzo breathing hard, pulling her sequence coat tighter around her shoulders. Earl, wiping the slick of oil from his forearm, let out a low grin. "We scared the devil away," Earl said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "More like we kicked his ass with a side of pork chops and a busted guitar," Lizzo replied. The kitchen staff, still clutching their ladles and spatulas, nodded in unison, their faces smeared with sauce and sweat. Jane tossed the chain aside. The drifters hunched their guitars, strumming low, triumphant chord. Outside, the rain softened to a drizzle. The asphalt glistened under with a sheen of oil and grease and the remnants of the battle. The neon sign buzzed back to life, its glow washing over the wet tarmac like a promise of tomorrow. And in the distance, a lone truck rolled past, its headlights cutting through the night, the driver humming a new twisted tale of Highway to Hell that still echoed from the jukebox. It was just another Tuesday night at the Longhorn Diner, except for the fact that the kingdom of chrome and neon had survived a hellish invasion, proving the crew of truckers, drifters, cooks, and lot lizards could stand together against anything, even the devil himself and a leather-bound dictator. Lizzo leaned back in her booth, lifted her coffee mug again, and toasted the empty air. "To Tuesdays that don't end in fire," she said. Earl, clinking his mug against hers, with his grin widening. And to the boys and girls who know how to fight dirty. The rain ticked, the soft rhythm on the roof, the jukebox hummed a final chord, and the night stretched on, dark, wet, and oddly comforting. In the heart of Oklahoma's wasteland, the Longhorn Diner roared to life once more, its kingdom intact, a queen triumphant, and its story destined to become legend around the next pit stop. And somewhere far beyond the thunderclouds, a forgotten portal lay sealed, waiting for the next rainstorm. If anyone ever dared open it again, but for now, the only thing moving at the Longhorn Diner was the steady hum of engines pulling in, the clatter of plates, and the occasional laugh of a queen who had just beaten Satan at his own game. $20 is $20, DB Mac. You're welcome, George. Thank you for spending your birthday with us, buddy. I appreciate that. I really do. Andy Davis, have a good night, buddy. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Appreciate you. I grew up in western New York near Rochester, not too far from the Canadian border. My dad built what I can only describe as a mini mansion. Thomas Brewer, thank you so much, my friend. Thank you very much. Wow, I appreciate that. You guys are awesome. Thank you guys for blessing the channel. A mini mansion that backed up to a large wooded area we called Forever Wild Woods because it was connected in our minds to New York's protected wilderness lands. Once the house was built, my closest friend DJ, this was the early 90s, and we loved being outside. One day, while exploring, we found an amazing section of woods about 50-minute walk from the house. It opened into a beautiful swamp full of flowers, water, and life. As we approached it, I remember noticing snapping trees all around us. There was also straight branches jammed into the ground like spikes. The solid ground extended into the swamp like a narrow peninsula. The trees on both sides also formed walls, funneling us out toward the water. When we reached the end, we saw snapping turtles quickly submerge. Since we were just kids, we started skipping stones and throwing larger rocks into the water to make big splashes. We're only playing around. Then out of nowhere, both DJ and I felt a sudden wave of fear. It was like a sixth sense, something primal. The hair on our bodies stood. We both began looking around, trying to figure out what had triggered this. DJ pointed to a tree across the water. I can only describe what I saw as the top half of the tree bending violently back and forth. It was not moving as if it was being pushed by the wind. It looked as though something powerful was bending it to the point that it may snap. It went left, then right, then back again. The movement became faster and faster. The tree was creaking loudly, but the bottom of the trunk barely moved. Shit. Sorry, guys. Then, without warning, there was a deep rumbling growl. It was so loud and powerful that it shook us inside. I've been around loud things before, and I later learned to shoot an 8-gauge black powdered shotgun. But nothing compared to the force of that sound. It felt like my soul had been pushed through the back and then snapped back into me like a giant invisible rubber band. In the dead silence that followed, DJ and I ran for our lives. We ran the rest of the way home through the brush and branches. Our exposed skin was getting scratched and torn apart, but neither of us stopped. I remember thinking I could hear something pursuing us from all around, but neither of us said a word about it. while we were running. When we got home, we tried to tell my parents what happened, but they wouldn't listen. After that, we decided to stay inside for the rest of the day. Jay was spending the night, and we decided to sleep in the large room in the house that we call the support. It was about 25 by 25 feet with a double hung window and two exterior walls, a sliding glass door that led to a 3-story deck, and a French door leading into the formal living room. My dad had worked hard in life. He went from being a garbage man to owning a business, and the house reflected that. DJ was sleeping on the couch. I was lying on the floor in front of the TV with my Nintendo. It was summer, so all the double hung windows were wide open. As I stretched out on the floor with my arms behind my head, my neck was resting on a couple of pillows, and my fingers were interlaced between my head. My hands were folded up behind me, with my elbows flared out. DJ was already asleep and snoring. I was half asleep, watching something on TV. As God is my witness, out of nowhere I felt a massive hand engulf my hands, part of my wrists. Then it pulled me toward the window. I slid about 2 to 3 feet across the floor, completely lost it, screamed in terror. Whatever had grabbed me released me, and within a minute my dad came running into the room. DJ was silent. He was just staring at me. I told my dad what had happened. He checked every window and said all the screens were slid down in that place. He told me that it was just a dream, that I needed to be a man and man up and shut up. So I shut up. I just prayed that he would leave the room. After he left, I looked at DJ and asked him if he had seen it. He just stared at me and would not say anything. A short time later, he called his parents and picked him up in the middle of the night. I went upstairs, tried to sleep in my room. The next day, I called DJ's house to see if he wanted to come over. His mom said that he did not feel well and told me not to call again until I heard from him. That confused my 12-year-old mind. We were best friends, but after that night, we never got together again. I would see him occasionally, but he was always cold towards me. Eventually, near the end of that summer, I ran into him on a canal path, one of our old fishing spots. His mom, so I finally questioned him. He confessed that he had awakened to see something grab me. He did not call it a predator, but that was the closest description, he said. It was massive, clearly disoriented, shimmering thing. He saw it reach in and pull me. At the time, I have no idea what other people were seeing. Something similar, cloaked, invisible. I now refer to what grabbed me as a predator-like creature, or Glimmerman. Did it lift the screen, reach through, and then slide it back down quickly? Did it somehow pass through the fiberglass mesh? I don't know. I checked the area the next morning, but found no tracks. How do you milk a sheep? Bring out a new iPhone and charge $1,000 for it. Jesus Christ. All right, Black Eyed Kids. To celebrate the 4th of July, I was having a few drinks with my parents, and as we were discussing several different topics, we eventually stumbled onto sharing some ghost stories. I mean, we've all heard each other's usual stories before. I can write them down verbatim, my dad's encounter with an elf, which I always found myself chuckling about. But that night, I brought up something that I have struggled to come to terms with for years. This took place when I was around 10. I'm 25 now, so 15 years ago. To give you a perspective of time, my friends lived in different neighborhoods around the town. So, since I was really the only kid in my age group who lived in my little part of town, I would occupy my free time by riding my Little Mermaid bicycle down the street. It was a very LAX part of it was a very lax part of the township, typical of the residential area that surrounded the city. One summer evening, I was wasting some time before dinner by pedaling my bike up and down the street. When I was rolling to a T shaped intersection that I would always stop and turn around, I noticed two girls my age sitting peacefully in front of a house opposite the intersection. They were staring at me, almost if they were aware of my arrival. Both were wearing light colored nightgowns, which which I thought was a bit strange considering the time of day and being outside. I can't recall if they were twins. Something tells me they were, but I can't remember much detail of their faces. As I got closer to the intersection on my bike, they called out to me cheerfully, beckoning me with jubilant arm motions to come toward them. Guess what? I did. I felt a rush of excitement toil over me at the thought of having a couple friends to play with. So I really wasn't asking why they were outside in nightgowns, or even if where they came from. You see, the people that owned the house behind them were quite elderly. I mean, I rarely ever seen them, the people who owned the house, or see them leave their house at all. The edges of the property were quite grown over, which made the house kind of look nestled and empty. All right, Little Mermaid. They were staring at me, called out carefully, jubilant, elderly. I rarely ever seen them leave the house. They were both talking to me, telling me that I should come and play with them. And I said I'd love to, but I would have to bike home first and ask my mom. They seemed less than thrilled at that idea. They were definitely trying their hardest to coax me into staying there with them, telling me that I did not need to tell my mom that it wasn't that far away. I insisted that I would be back shortly. When I arrived back at my house, I threw my bike onto the grass and ran to the front door, opening it partially to ask my mom if it was all right if I played with these two girls up the street. My mom turned around and seemed visibly confused, but agreed, so I went back. I rode up to the house that they were at, but they weren't there. I was a little disappointed. I even felt bad for having to go home first. I walked my bike up the driveway and proceeded to walk up to the door, knocking on it gently. An elderly woman opened the door. I told her the girls asked me to come and play. What girls? She asked, a puzzled look on her face. There were two girls outside just a bit ago. They asked if I could play with them. No kids here, sweetie. You know, you're the only kid in the street. As she shut the door, I never saw or heard of the girls again. As I am sharing this experience with my parents, I paused midway to make the disclaimer that I was sure if it was some kind of extremely detailed dream that I mixed up my memories because she never remembered any children living on our streets besides me. And it stuck out to her that I had asked to play with the two girls up the road. So, after explaining this story to my parents, I did some research. Apparently, the phenomenon of supernatural beings disguised as children, black eyed children, is an urban legend. I had no knowledge of this. And although it's said to have been debunked, I will say that it's eerily similar to what I experienced. I don't remember them having black eyes. In fact, it's almost as if their faces were blurred. They weren't even acting ominous or intimidating, but they wanted me to stay there in the worst way. Ghosts, a glitch in the system, black eyed kids, or whatever. I'm struggling to find an explanation, as it's been one of the most puzzling things I'd ever experienced. All right. Asheville. All right, here we go. I currently live in Portland, Oregon. I was recently talking with a neighbor about a strange encounter he had while working at Crater Lake National Park back in the 80s. At the time, he was clearing brush and repairing a trail. One evening, soon after he had clocked out, he realized he had forgotten his work bag. He drove back up to the work site and started walking along the trail that led to the area where he had been working. That was when he first felt it. He said he suddenly had a strong impression that something was watching him from the forest. He had no idea what it was, but he knew something was there. He kept walking, trying to ignore the feeling, but then heard strange singing sound coming from somewhere in the trees. He described it as sounding like a woman or a child. It was haunting and strange. The sound seemed to be coming from the same direction as the work area, which made him more apprehensive about continuing. The more he listened, the more uneasy he became. Eventually, he decided that the bag could wait until the next day. He turned around and started back toward the truck. As he walked, he heard footsteps somewhere behind him in the distance. He turned around, but saw no one. He quickened his pace. The footsteps continued, and they seemed to be keeping pace with him. When he stopped, the footsteps stopped. Then he felt an overwhelming sense of danger. At that point, he ran. Just before he reached his truck, he turned around and he saw two bluish colored eyes staring at him through the darkness. He said there was something evil about those eyes. As he watched, the rest of the figure slowly became visible. It was a humanoid in shape, pale gray color. It stayed low to the ground and appeared to creep toward him. Its head looked alien like. He said he was transfixed by the sight and felt paralyzed. The thing stopped and stared at him without blinking. It then quickly turned, disappearing into the undergrowth. He stood there, shocked for a minute or two before he was able to move again. Instead of leaving immediately, he became curious about what he had just seen. He stepped forward and searched the area for 30 minutes, eventually giving up and walking back toward his truck. Before leaving, he returned to the area where he had first heard the strange singing. There he found tracks. They looked like dog tracks. They were very large. Each print appeared to have only 4 toes, not 5. He studied the tracks for several minutes, trying to understand what could have made them. Then something strange happened. He said his mind went blank. He suddenly couldn't remember why he had gone there or what had happened. Confused and unsettled, he decided to leave and go home. The next day at work, his boss radioed to him and asked if he had seen anything strange in the area. Another worker had apparently reported seeing something. My neighbor told him yes and described the gray-skinned creature with bluish eyes. His boss was dismissive and tried to explain it away, but the two of them went back to the area to look for tracks. When they arrived, they looked around for a few minutes. Then my neighbor said his mind went blank again. Just like before, he blacked out. That's when he became aware again that he was looking down at tracks. His boss was gone. He checked his watch and realized 2 hours had passed. It was now mid-afternoon. Had no memory of what had occurred. That terrified him. He walked back to the parking area, hopping in his truck. When he got in, he immediately returned to the main station. When he arrived, his boss was sitting in his office as if nothing had happened. My neighbor asked and casually asked how his day was going. It was as if the early trip to the site never happened. That was my neighbor's last day working at Crater Lake. He realized he had encountered something otherworldly and wanting nothing more to do with it. In all the years since, he has never experienced anything out of the ordinary, but he stays away from Crater Lake and any kind of place with a history of the paranormal. All right, guys, I want to thank you all for hanging out with me tonight. Our first live stream back at the new place. I truly appreciate it. Johnny Ohm, how are you? New residence is where I'm at. New residence, new studio. Super happy. Super, super happy. 59th, thank you. I will be back next week, same time. Just got to kind of get into I'm still beat from moving, but it's so worth being here with you guys. So thank you guys for hanging out with me on a Saturday. You guys made it worth it, and you guys just being here make it worth it, So thank you. And with that, I love you all, and I will see you next week. Thank you.